Aren't you a little feminine for a stormtrooper?
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal. Suddenly you kissed my wire. Baby, my heart's on fire.
Another action figure from the Star Wars 7 Force Awakens Black Series line. This one is Captain Phasma. Clad in distinctive metallic armor, Captain Phasma commands the First Order's legions of troopers. This is 06 in the Black Series. Captain Phasma is little more than a regular stormtrooper action figure with shinier, fancier armor and a fake plastic rubber cape. This is apparently a fairly popular character, although I'm not sure exactly why. She didn't have much screen time in the movie, but then again, neither did the Flame Troopers, and that didn't stop Hasbro from making their figures, now did it? But you people don't care about the box, do you? You want to see what the figure is like. Let us remove Captain Phasma from her box and review her properly. And here is Captain Phasma out of her package. She looks fairly butch for a female stormtrooper, although I suppose the First Order didn't have enough money to spring for feminine armor plating. Many collectors have complained that this figure was not vac-metalized, but I can hear what you're saying now.
But Death,
You say,
they did it with the Cylon Raiders way back when, and the C-3PO figures, and all the other Star Wars figures that had shiny metal parts. Why couldn't they do it for Captain Phasma?
well, my dear mortal friends, it is because whether or not your media cares to admit it, you are in the midst of a global economic downturn. Every company is cutting back, cutting costs, cutting corners, and scaling back to use the cheapest materials and least expensive methods of manufacturing that they can possibly contrive. And that includes with this figure. Instead of using vac metal, which would have made it very shiny and really cool, they used a sort of silver metallic paint, which, if you catch the light with it just right, you can squint your eyes and imagine that it's metallic. Another thing that sets Captain Phasma off from her regular First Order counterparts is this funky cape. It has some molded detailing on it, a loose strap and some patches here and there. I'm sure that there is some significance to that, although I don't know it. The only thing that I know for sure is that this cape does not hang evenly. Could not anyone in the First Order have informed Captain Phasma that her cape is hanging off-center? The paint has a sort of brushed metal look, which is not entirely movie accurate, but let's face it, if it were vac metal, one scratch or scuff and everyone would be complaining. And this is Hasbro and Disney we're talking about, so of course they would do it on the cheap. I do not fault Captain Phasma for the detailing. The silver paint seems to be a little bit neater than on the white version of the Stormtroopers, but that may simply be because they didn't have to paint any black stripes on any of the seams. Captain Phasma has the easy carry handle of the standard Stormtrooper, the QR barcode for easy scanning. There is some extra detailing on the helmet to set her off from her regular Stormtrooper counterparts, although she still looks a lot like a duck. There is excellent detailing on the arms and shoulder plating, on the waist, and on the belt and the legs. There is some imperfections on the paint on my figure, and I suppose that will creep through in manufacturing for almost all of the Captain Phasma figures. The gun is highly detailed as well, although the color on the pistol does not seem to match the silver on the armor. One has to question the wisdom of making the captain leader of these stormtroopers so distinctive from her fellows. When on the battlefield, this would stand out like a beacon saying, "Shoot me, shoot me." And even if it is reflective armor plating, that makes her a danger to all the troopers standing next to her. The cape is a sort of floppy rubber plastic material that has some bend and give to it, although I would not advise bending it or trying to stretch it too far. It hangs loosely and will nudge back and forth a bit. If you pull the head off of its ball socket, I suppose you could also remove the cape if you feel so inclined. But let's face it, who's going to remove Captain Phasma's cape? No capes. As a Black Series figure, Captain Phasma shares the same basic level of articulation as almost all the other Black Series figures, with a 360-degree rotating head on a ball socket joint, which will allow you to tilt it up and down very slightly. With almost all instances of the figure's articulation, the cape will be a restriction. That includes with the arms and shoulders. You will not be able to raise this arm much higher than this without bumping it into the cape. And depending on how much care and caution you wish to exercise in making sure that the paint does not scuff or wear off, you will want to avoid trying to rub against the cape as much as possible. The arms are ball socketed and will rotate 360 degrees if the cape weren't in the way. They will swivel in and out if the cape weren't in the way. There is an elbow swivel, a bendable elbow joint. The wrist will rotate 360 degrees in its socket and also bend back and forth slightly on a hinge. The armor plating that is molded into the figure will restrict wrist movement slightly. You do not want to try to push too hard on this joint for fear of breaking the plastic. The joints are thin enough that they could snap if pushed too hard. There is upper waist rotation and tilt, although again the cape gets in the way. There is no waist rotation, but the thighs do have a ball socket joint and a thigh swivel which allows for rotation. As with almost all stormtrooper figures, the belt pouches tend to get in the way of rotating the thighs. The thighs will allow for rotation if you nudge the plastic of the upper thigh very slightly and slide it under the belt pouch. Again, caution should be taken when rotating in that instance to make sure that the paint does not scrape off from the upper thigh. There is a double-jointed knee, which will allow for excellent flexibility, and a foot tilt. The foot will not rotate in its socket, however. The cape has a tendency to make the figure overbalance backwards, so when placing the figure for display, be sure to fiddle with it to make sure that it doesn't fall over. The figure comes with only one accessory, a silver-plated version of the standard First Order Stormtrooper laser rifle. And as with the standard Stormtrooper figures, the weapon will plug into a slot on the thigh for storage, allowing your Captain Phasma to prepare for gunslinging. All right, Pilgrim, draw. The gun accessory will fit neatly into either one of the figure's hands, although with most of the First Order Stormtrooper figures, the gun has a weird tendency to bend. I suppose maybe they did this on purpose so that the Stormtroopers can shoot around corners, or perhaps they realized that the Stormtroopers never hit what they're aiming for, so they made the pistols crooked so that when they shoot at a target, they will actually hit it. For size comparison, here is Captain Phasma next to Thundercat's Chitara. Here is Captain Phasma next to Transformers animated Black Arachnia. And here is Captain Phasma next to Dr. Doofenshmirtz. Hey Phasma, my cape hangs evenly. It's that simple. The Captain Phasma figure has all of the same positives and negatives as most of the other figures from the Black Series. It has strong articulation, excellent detailing, excellent paint, and a decent weapon accessory. The negative aspects include a very stiff plastic cape. Without the addition of the cape and the paint, it might be hard to tell Phasma apart from her normal Stormtrooper counterparts. I give Captain Phasma 7 out of 10 deaths, because it takes more than just silver paint and a fake plastic cape to be cool in this day and age. Besides, how can you be cool when you take orders from some jerk named Snoke?
If you refuse me, honey, you lose me, then you'll be left alone, oh baby, tell them all, and tell me I'm your own.